The upcoming Canadian elections have brought a critical issue to the forefront of political discourse: the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This complex and emotionally charged issue is increasingly shaping Canadian politics, particularly as Arab and Muslim voters gain greater electoral influence. The question looms large: how will Canadian political parties address the concerns of these voters regarding Palestine? For many Arab and Muslim Canadians, the Palestinian issue is not merely a foreign policy matter, it is a deeply personal and moral imperative. Years of witnessing the plight of Palestinians under Israeli occupation have fueled a desire for justice and accountability. This sentiment is particularly strong among younger generations who are increasingly politically engaged and vocal in their support for Palestine. As a result, the Palestinian cause has transitioned from a fringe issue to a central concern for a growing segment of the Canadian electorate. The 2025 election may well hinge on how political parties choose to address this evolving political landscape. The increasing prioritization of the Palestinian issue by Arab and Muslim voters represents a significant shift in Canadian politics. For years, this community's electoral power remained largely untapped. However, recent elections have witnessed a surge in voter turnout and political organization within these communities. Organizations like #Elect Palestine, Muslims Vote, and Vote Palestine have emerged to mobilize and educate voters on the Palestinian issue. These groups are actively engaging with political candidates, hosting town halls, and pushing for concrete policy changes. Their message is clear: the Palestinian issue is a litmus test for political parties, and their votes will reflect their stance on this issue. This newfound political assertiveness is forcing Canadian political parties to confront the Palestinian issue head-on. Ignoring the concerns of these voters is no longer a viable option, particularly in key electoral ridings where their votes could swing the election. The term genocide carries immense weight, evoking images of unimaginable atrocities. For many Arab and Muslim voters in Canada, this term is not hyperbolic but a grim reality reflected in the ongoing situation in Palestine. The use of genocide to describe the plight of Palestinians has sparked debate and controversy. However, for those who see parallels between Israel's actions and the definition of genocide, this framing underscores the urgency and moral gravity of the issue. The genocide on the ballot narrative resonates deeply with voters who view the upcoming election as an opportunity to hold Canadian leaders accountable for their complicity in Israeli actions. This framing is particularly potent given Canada's history of promoting human rights and international law. By voting for parties that support Palestinian rights, these voters hope to align Canada's foreign policy with its stated values. The call for a two-way arms embargo on Israel has become a central demand for many advocating for Palestinian rights in Canada. This demand stems from the belief that Canada's current policy of supplying weapons to Israel directly contributes to the ongoing conflict and human rights violations. Supporters of an arms embargo argue that it is hypocritical for Canada to claim to be a champion of human rights while simultaneously arming a state accused of war crimes. They point to the devastating impact of Israeli military actions on Palestinian civilians as evidence that Canadian weapons are being used to perpetrate human rights abuses. A recent poll by the National Council of Canadian Muslims found that over half of Canadians support a ban on weapons exports to Israel, with nearly 50% favoring a complete two-way embargo. This suggests that the demand for an arms embargo resonates beyond the Arab and Muslim community, reflecting a growing awareness of the issue among Canadians. The arms embargo debate has become a litmus test for Canadian political parties, forcing them to clarify their stance on Canada's complicity in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Section 5. Navigating the Tightrope, the Liberal Party's Dilemma. The Liberal Party, under the leadership of Mark Carney, faces a delicate balancing act regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. While traditionally seen as sympathetic to Israel, the party is acutely aware of the growing electoral significance of Arab and Muslim voters who are demanding a more balanced approach. Carney's own history on the issue is, well, complex. During his tenure as foreign minister, he announced a loophole-laden arms embargo on Israel in March 2025. However, this move was widely criticized by pro-Palestinian groups as insufficient, failing to address the full scope of Canada's military cooperation with Israel. Further complicating matters, a recent poll revealed that 70% of Liberal voters agree that Canada should recognize the ICC arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant. This presents a significant dilemma for Carney, who risks alienating a core constituency if he fails to take a stronger stance in support of Palestinian rights. The Liberal Party's success in the upcoming election may depend on their ability to navigate this tightrope, balancing their traditional support for Israel with the growing demands of Arab and Muslim voters. Section 6. Unwavering support, the Conservative Party's pro-Israel stance. The Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre, has maintained an unwavering stance in support of Israel, often echoing the rhetoric of the Israeli government. Poilievre himself has been a vocal critic of Palestinian activism, dismissing pro-Palestinian protests as hate marches and accusing critics of Israel of anti-Semitism. This staunch pro-Israel position resonates with a segment of the Canadian population, particularly those with strong ties to Israel or who view the country as a key ally in an unstable region. However, this stance comes at a cost. Poilievre's dismissive attitude towards Palestinian concerns and his use of inflammatory language have alienated many Arab and Muslim voters. They view his rhetoric as dismissive of their lived experiences and concerns about human rights abuses. The Conservative Party's unwavering support for Israel, while appealing to a specific base, risks alienating a growing segment of the electorate that prioritizes the Palestinian issue. Section 7. The power of the ballot box. Arab and Muslim voters hold the key. Arab and Muslim voters represent a significant and growing portion of the Canadian electorate, particularly in key electoral ridings across the country. Their concentration in over 90 ridings, with the potential to be decisive in over 40, grants them substantial electoral influence. This demographic reality is not lost on political parties, who are increasingly recognizing the need to court these voters. However, courting their vote requires more than token gestures or vague promises. Arab and Muslim voters are looking for concrete policy changes that reflect their concerns regarding the Palestinian issue. The 2025 election presents an opportunity for these voters to leverage their electoral power to effect real change in Canada's foreign policy. By voting for candidates and parties that prioritize Palestinian rights, they can send a clear message that Canada's complicity in the occupation is no longer acceptable. The power of the ballot box lies in its ability to amplify the voices of the marginalized and hold elected officials accountable. Section 8. Public opinion, a nation divided on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has long been a source of debate and division within Canadian society. While Canada has historically maintained a close relationship with Israel, public opinion polls suggest a growing sympathy for the Palestinian cause, particularly among younger generations. A recent poll revealed that 56% of Canadians support Canada recognizing the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants for Netanyahu and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. This suggests a shift in public opinion, with a growing number of Canadians questioning Israel's actions and calling for accountability. Furthermore, the NCCM poll mentioned earlier, which found majority support for an arms embargo on Israel, indicates that Canadians are increasingly uncomfortable with their country's role in supplying weapons to a conflict zone. While public opinion on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains complex and nuanced, these polls suggest a growing willingness among Canadians to critically examine Canada's role in the conflict and to demand a more balanced approach. Section 9. The 2025 election, a turning point for Canada's role in the conflict. The 2025 Canadian election has the potential to be a turning point in Canada's relationship with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The convergence of factors, including the growing political mobilization of Arab and Muslim voters, shifting public opinion, and the increasing scrutiny of Canada's arms sales to Israel, has created an unprecedented opportunity for change. The outcome of the election will likely depend on which party can effectively address the concerns of voters who prioritize the Palestinian issue. Ignoring these concerns could prove costly, potentially costing parties crucial votes in key ridings. Canadian political parties face a choice. Will they continue to prioritize traditional alliances and political calculations, or will they heed the growing calls for justice and accountability regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? The 2025 election may well determine whether Canada continues down a path of complicity or chooses to become a genuine force for peace and human rights in the region.
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.